Yum. All right. Oh, okay, it's Saturday evening, and I'm back. And I hope all of you had a great week. First of all, let's shut down this music. All right. Just taking in some breath air. We were outside a little while ago. It's so really nice. We finally got our swimming pool, our above-ground swimming pool set up. My fiance and I just got back from having a really, really spicy Indian meal at well, it was recommended to us from a friend who's a Sri Lankan. And we were looking for some food like a Sri Lankan meal, so just got back home from that. Anyways, excuse me while I have a sip of my coffee while it's still hot. That's 8 o'clock. I shouldn't be drinking coffee this late at night, but got to put this video together for you tomorrow. For today, I mean, because tomorrow I'm having a, what am I calling it? I'm calling it a pool and barbecue and beer garden party. Inviting my son who's visiting from Spain and some friends of mine, a past editor friend of mine. So, and my agent. So I'm having this party. We're having this party. And I'm doing some smoking. I'll be smoking ribs and burgers, and I'll be smoking cheese. And then I'll be busy all day tomorrow. And so, got to get this done tonight. So tonight, the episode is called No Moosey's on the Road. So let's get to her. Excuse me. And by the way, I might have done this earlier this week, but I actually worked 2 full days. For a retired guy, I'm kind of busy. So, no Moosey's on the road. Now, when we left off last week, okay, so I was checking out my guns. Well, not me, but the character in the book. Albert was checking out his guns and feeling safe and secure and, not inclined to do anything foolish, as he might have been once upon a time, because he suffers from seasonal affective disorder, which was the kind of bombshell that Stevie had asked him about. It's a mental illness. Anyways, he's dealt with it, and one of these days I'll explain to you how I dealt with my seasonal affective disorder. So, No Moosey's on the Road, Chapter 4. It wasn't too much longer after my conversation with Stevie. It wasn't too much longer after my conversation with Stevie had ended that a pair of headlights broke the darkness up ahead of us. This was my first encounter with another vehicle along this highway since we crossed the tracks just north of Gogama. Instinctively, I kicked off my road lights so as not to blind him. I quickly glanced down at the clock. It read 10:10. The CB radio crackled to life and startled Stevie, who must have drifted back off to sleep. Breaker 19. How about you there, northbound? You got your ears on? Yeah, go ahead, southbound, I replied. I hear you loud and clear. Have an eye up ahead there, driver. Couple of miles on my back door, I seen a moose in the swamp, right next to the highway. It'd be on your right side. She looked like a big old cow. Don't know if she'll still be there when you get there, but be careful. I appreciated the heads up on the moose, thanking him. Personally, I ain't seen hide nor hair of a moose, deer or bear for that matter, since I passed Cartier. He readily latched on to my meaning of bear, or the local OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police. I don't need to worry about no bears, not in this here neutered buggy, he remarked sarcastically with a chuckle. He rolled by us just as he was making that comment. I quickly recognized that the voice in the darkness on the CB was driving a big red Manitoulin cab-over super truck. All their trucks were strictly governed and they couldn't speed even if they wanted to. The only way to speed in one of those oversized monsters was to find a long downgrade. And if you were speeding, heaven help you at the bottom. As the truck's tail and clearance lights disappeared behind a bend around the rock wall, the driver came back on the CB one last time to reiterate that she was meandering real close to the road. She just might want to wander over to the other side. You can never tell what they're going to do. Grass always seems to be greener on the other side of the highway to them, usually just about the time you're passing them. Take care now. Back at you, driver, I replied, and then hung up the mic. Steve restlessly stirred in his seat, took in a deep waking sigh, stretched and sat bolt upright. He looked over at me and asked, "That man said there's a moose up ahead?" "Supposed to be," I answered. You let me know if you see anything on your side of the road. I eased up on the throttle, cutting back to 70 kilometers, just in case. Both of us simultaneously stared through the windshield into the almost impenetrable, misty darkness, straining to see a shadowy figure of a moose. Have you got your high beams on, Mr. Meisner? Stevie asked. Can't use them in this kind of fog and drizzle. Just reflects the light back into your eyes. But thanks for reminding me, and I clicked on my road lights. We were both so preoccupied with looking for this moose that had Jason not stumbled out of bed and through the vinyl curtain, we wouldn't have even known he was standing between us. Bracing himself by holding on to our respective headrests, he leaned his groggy face forward, peered through the windshield, and asked, almost in a whisper, "So where's the Moosey?" When Bernie and I and our two kids had first moved up to Dowling back in June of '89, a small town 20 miles northwest of Sudbury, I had told the kids we were going to live in moose country. All of their short lives, up until then anyway, had been spent living in a generally animal-free zone of Mississauga. In Toronto, you wanted to see wild animals, you had to go to Toronto Zoo or to Yonge Street on a Friday night. Shortly after moving to Dowling, I told Andrea and Jason that in order for them to someday see, and possibly even capture a moose, they'd have to learn how to perform an appropriate moose call. To illustrate at the time, I would cup my hands to my mouth, deeply inhale for dramatic effect, and rather than bellow out some wildly ridiculous trumpeting sound, I'd shout, "Here, Moosey, Moosey, Moosey!" Yeah, to add to the effect, I even tried to sound like Bullwinkle, one of our favorite cartoon characters at the time. Both kids thought that was hilarious, and have ever since resorted to the Moosey call whenever we went for walks along some wilderness trail. So why should tonight be any different, I reflected. And then, the Moosey's supposed to be somewhere up ahead, Stevie answered with a smirk, playing along. Hey, that's what my dad calls him, quipped Jason, defensively without looking at me. Hey, Dad! Sorry, Steve and I are late. We stopped by briefly to visit with Opa on our way here when Tanya came by and told us Mom and Mrs. Vanier wanted to see us. I literally jumped out of my seat and banged one of my knees on the underside of my desk at Jason's boisterous announcement. Whoa, you guys gave me quite a start. I hadn't even seen or heard them walk in when they startled me out of my deep reverie. They appeared quite taken aback by my abrupt reaction. So enraptured had I become in the world of that vision that my own world briefly stopped existing during those visits. I was beginning to worry if I'd be able to withdraw from those trance-like states at my own will and discretion. Perhaps it would be better, at least for now, if I had others with me helping throughout this project, providing some distraction. I wouldn't become so focused and possibly get lost in yet another world if I were completely on my own. I immediately printed off what I had already documented. I was amazed at what I had accomplished in so short a time. I hadn't realized how much I'd actually written. I then let each of the boys take a turn at quickly perusing my notes, even though I wasn't at all worried about the possibility of having forgotten something. Both Jason and Steve, were impressed with my body of work so far and expressed genuine interest in assisting me. I confided in them my paranormal experience and ability at recollection, as well as my concern of becoming entrapped in one of these episodes. Boys, the best way I can describe this experience is like someone who has been hypnotized to enable them to see or remember a particular detail from their past. Only mine is self-induced, which obviously presents the unique problem of who uninduces me. Not only that, but it seems my recollections are far more vivid, to the point of animation in every exact detail. So in other words, I implore you to make certain I remain in this present world. After giving it some thought, Jason inquired, So where do you want to begin, Dad? How about starting with, Here, Moosey, Moosey? We all had a good laugh, and the mood was established. I resumed my place at the keyboard. Jason and Steve drew up closer to the desk, sitting on a pair of chairs I had rounded up from the dining room. Jason started by recounting that back then, when he was 13, he wasn't at all as tall as he would have liked to have been. He reminded me I had to keep assuring him that soon he'd reach his growth spurt, just as I did at 15. So, likewise, he grew several inches taller in just 1 year. Now my adult height is 5'10", and Bernie was 5'8", so it stood to reason Jason would more than likely get as tall as me. His uncle and both grandfathers were well over 6 feet, so he had their genes. He just needed the time. Back then, we never discussed height in front of his friend Stevie because it was quite unlikely he'd ever experience a similar growth spurt. Bill, Stevie's father, and his mother Jackie were just 5'8" and 5'5" respectively. Of course, both boys at the time were almost at the same age and height, so there was never any envy or rivalry in their relationship. Both boys possessed features that ensured they would grow to be handsome young men. As Jason grew and matured, he did become quite tall as well as strikingly handsome. Or so I'm told by Bernie. She, on the other hand, hears it from Andrea, who in turn hears it from her female friends. Steve grew to become a handsome young man as well, but he never attained Jason's stature of 6 feet. The best he could achieve in height was 5'9", an inch above his dad and at least 2 over Sean. He wasn't as broad-shouldered or stout as his father or brother. Their physique was more akin to that of weightlifters. Steve's appearance was more athletic, more lithe, like a hockey player. I suspected he got that trait from his mother's side of the family. Steve was mature enough not to let the issue of his height be a problem for him when he and Jason were together. He even developed a sense of humor about his height, boasting that, at least, he was taller than Tom Cruise and far more handsome. Even his idol, Theo Fleury, was shorter than he was, and Steve was just as good a player on the ice in his own league. As for Jason, he got his thick, dirty blonde hair from my side, but it grew straight, not sort of curly like mine. His face was more oval than mine, and he inherited a strong, single chin from Bernie's side, as my chin was cleft. He always sported a mischievous smile when he wasn't being serious. His profound sense of curiosity and blue eyes he inherited from me. Now we go back into the drifting of my thoughts. So where the hell was the Moosey? We were asking ourselves that night. It began to drizzle more heavily, almost into a steady rain, which didn't help matters any. Now and then a distant burst of lightning would briefly light up the sky along with our immediate surroundings. The storm appeared to be concentrating in our immediate vicinity. Whoa! I muttered and found myself shaking my head. I had just relapsed momentarily back in and out of that night. It seems both boys were unaware of what I had just experienced. I inhaled deeply in an attempt to try and steady myself, but once again I found myself spiraling into the memory. I drove on like that with Jason standing between me and Steve for about 20 minutes, the three of us intently searching the shadows without ever sighting any wildlife, let alone the elusive Moosey. Jason stated that at the time he thought he saw a wolf or coyote, but nothing else disrupted the bleak solitude of this dark, dreary, and stormy night. Almost sounds like the beginning of a bad novel. I recalled whispering at the time, "It was a dark and stormy night," and Jason commenting, "That's how Snoopy begins all of his novels." That memory flash made the three of us burst out laughing out loud once again. I was back in my own den and not in the Freightliner. Or was I? It was becoming evident I was having difficulty distinguishing reality from my dream states. But the boys were here. I should be okay for now. I subconsciously decided not to resist or attempt to alter whatever state of mind I was in. Basically, just go with the flow, as I had decided earlier. Finally, the drizzle appeared to taper off, and I could allow my eyes and neck to relax. Driving under so much tension for such a long time could dangerously increase a driver's fatigue, and we still had a ways to go before we could stop for the night. Anyway, my intention was to stop at the Esso truck stop, a few miles past the highway's junction at 144 and 101, just inside Timmins town line. I figured that with good timing, I might get 5 or 6 hours of sleep before having to get up. My plan was to grab a quick bite, take some Java to go, and still be on time for my delivery appointment. I remember having settled comfortably into my seat when you and I looked over to Jason, got the scare of our lives when you, Stevie, and I glanced over to him, I remember having settled comfortably into my seat when you and I looked over to Jason, got the scare of our lives when you, Stevie, I glanced over to him, belted out the most blood-curdling shrill I ever heard that night. "Hey, guys," Stevie protested jokingly, gesturing with his hands raised. "My voice hadn't broken yet. Besides, I seriously thought we were in danger." "What was it you screamed again?" Jason chided. "Oh, yeah. Holy cow! He squealed in falsetto, mimicking Stevie back then, giving him a friendly jab to the shoulder. Yeah, and I remember you getting pretty freaked out yourself when you saw what I was looking at, Stevie countered defensively. Excuse me. Okay. Steve candidly recalled how he had his face and hands pasted against the passenger window. All the while, Jason was leaning over him, crowding at the same window. All I could see at the time was both you boys desperately craning your heads in an upward glance, staring at something high above us, somewhere in the sky. It didn't take long for you guys to inform me, in very excited and anguished voices, that there was a huge fireball or meteor coming directly at us. In unison, you both shouted at me, Dad, Mr. Meisner, it looks like it's going to crash right on top of us. Well, it sure as hell was scary at the time, insisted an indignant Jason. Of course, we were extremely agitated and panicking. We were only 13 and 14, they were both quick to remind me. Granted, I conceded, but at the time, I couldn't see anything from my vantage point sitting in the driver's seat. In my defense, I thought you guys were merely witnessing a meteorite racing by us low in the sky, or a highly charged lightning show like St. Elmo's fire. I had seen a lot of those traveling at night across the country. What with low cloud ceiling, the sight could be pretty spectacular. But then the whole eastern sky under those clouds, as well as all the adjacent countryside, lit up like daylight. Only it stayed lit. That's when I realized what was happening was definitely not lightning or a passing meteorite. That's also when I finally took you guys seriously and initiated evasive maneuvers. Now, I have a picture to show you. Okay, it's in the book, but I also have it here off to the side. And I'll just hold it up. Excuse me. Oh, and that's the end of the chapter, by the way. Next week, Chapter 5, The Mystery of the Fireball. And let's get my bookmark in there. So, I'm going to hold this up, but I've also figured out on the computer how to show it. So here you go. Here it is. You can see the Freightliner. You see the two modules in the box. And you see the sky lit up with a bright meteorite. Okay. Anyways, I make no apologies for it being a short chapter, because I have a lot of things to do to prepare for the party. So, if you don't mind, I hope you guys have a good... Oh, by the way, Happy Canada Day! So, have a great Sunday and a great Monday. I'll be uploading this tomorrow for all of you to view. And be safe, drink responsibly. And we'll see you again next Saturday. Okay. I'll take this upstairs and eat it in the gazebo outside. Again, Happy Canada Day.